Hi, welcome to the CAES seminar series. Today we have Dr. Susanna Keriö from the Department of Forestry and Horticulture. Uh, he will give a seminar entitled "In Perspective on Urban Tree Health Management in Connecticut." Dr. Keriö, she joined us back in April last year, 2020. By the time we start to lock down in United States, she received the PhD in agriculture and forestry from the University of Helsinki, Finland. So Dr. Susanna, she's specialized in urban tree and tree response to stress, and today she will talk about her current research. So I will give you Dr. Keriö. So welcome, Dr. Susanna Keriö.
Thank you. Hello everyone, my name is Susanna Keriö. Thank you very much for this opportunity to talk about urban tree health today. My talk will focus mostly on some major stress factors encountered by urban trees, especially in Connecticut, with primary focus on drought. Additionally, I will cover what options are available for stress mitigation in urban conditions and what type of research I'm conducting related to urban tree stress research. A few words about my research program at the Connecticut Ag Experiment Station. My current research focuses on understanding how trees respond to stress and how these responses translate into ecophysiological and molecular stress signatures. My goal is to utilize these stress signatures for proactive urban tree health management. Additionally, I'm also interested in testing how the growth conditions of trees can be manipulated both in urban and arboricultural conditions such as nurseries, with the ultimate goal of developing new tree health management methods to improve tree stress tolerance. So mitigation of tree stress will become increasingly important as climate change is predicted to amplify the tree stress conditions in urban conditions especially. The stress impacts are amplified in urban areas where the growth conditions for trees are often suboptimal. My talk today will focus on why the life of urban trees is so challenging. So this comic strip on this slide is actually a pretty accurate description of how the life of an urban tree is. The space to grow in urban conditions is very limited. There are heavy loads of air pollution, so the canopies of trees are pretty stressed in the urban conditions. And yeah, the pollutants do provide the trees an access to nutrients, sort of kind of like a tree fast food option. But it may not be exactly what the tree needs to lead a healthy life. The main challenge related to urban trees is their close intersection with the human developed environment. And due to this close link to the constructed environment, urban trees and humans have daily interactions, which have both positive and negative impacts on our daily lives. For instance, trees provide the well-needed connection to nature for almost 50% of the world population who live in urban areas. And actually in Connecticut, even 90% of people are living in urban areas. So people in Connecticut are true urban forest dwellers. On the other hand, due to the urban space restrictions, urban trees are very expensive to establish and maintain, and they can cause a lot of economic damage if they happen to fall. Nevertheless, research indicates that the benefits of having urban trees outweigh the negative sides of having urban trees. So what are the benefits of having urban trees? For instance, the shading and evapotranspiration of trees cools the urban areas and has been estimated to reduce cooling costs of building by 20 to 30%. Trees have also been estimated to reduce the air particulate matter by 25%, which reduces the severity of respiratory complications, such as asthma or allergies. And merely having the trees around, just by looking at them, people can actually have health benefits. It has been shown that just seeing trees in your neighborhood can reduce your stress levels through the reduction in the stress hormones, cortisol and adrenaline in blood. The combined value of these health benefits has been estimated to be even as high as $1.6 billion in the big East Coast cities such as New York. So there are definitely good sides in having urban trees. And now in case, now that you know about the benefits of having urban trees around, you've got interested in planting a tree in your neighborhood. And if you happen to live in New Haven region, you can reach out to the Yale Urban Resource Initiative to request a tree to be planted in your neighborhood. If the tree will be planted, the requester needs to commit to water the tree for the first 3 years after planting. You can find more information about the tree planting options available in the New Haven area at the URI website. Next, I will outline the various urban factors that affect tree health. The impacts that urban environments have on tree health can be divided based on the part of the tree that they affect. The photosynthetic tissues or the leaves, the stem that supports the tree and conducts water, and the roots that are responsible for the uptake of water and minerals from the soil. If we start from the above ground parts, the impacts on the leaves will reduce the tree's capacity to produce carbohydrates, which are needed for growth and to manufacture all the chemical building blocks necessary for healthy tree life. For us, this would be comparable to a situation where we would not be getting enough calories from food. In urban conditions, buildings can block sunlight and power lines can restrict the space available to grow the canopy, which reduces the photosynthetic capacity of the trees. Due to higher average temperatures or heat island effects in urban areas, insect and pathogens can become more prevalent and the foliage may suffer from heat stress. Additionally, air pollution may damage the foliage and reduce the photosynthetic capacity of trees in this way. For the woody stem, the main issue arises from the frequent exposure to mechanical damage, for instance, from vehicles that are collapsing to the trees and damage the bark and the water-conducting silent tissues. This can attract insects and expose the trees to pathogens, decay, and mechanical failure. Damage to the water-conducting tissues also reduces the availability of water for photosynthesis, which then escalates into problems in the already stressed trees. However, the root of the problem literally lies in the soil conditions. So the majority of urban tree health problems are related to the soil. So basically restricted space in the urban conditions, poor soil quality, soil compaction, impervious surfaces, pollution, heat from the pavement, and mechanical damage all restricted the access of trees to water and nutrients, which reflects as reduced growth and reduced lifespan of urban trees. Indeed, it has been estimated that 90% of urban tree health problems are soil related. Again, this comic on this slide demonstrates the sad story of many urban trees. The two trees here are planning to escape from the small tree pit and suggest to grow their roots over the next 30 years to dismantle the fence and then run for their lives. It is a common sight actually to see cracked pavements in urban conditions where the tree roots are looking for space to grow. However, in many cases, urban trees do not often make it past 20 years, mostly because of the problems related to soil conditions and root health issues, including the restricted growth space, low water availability, lack of oxygen due to compaction or pavement, and poor soil quality. So there are definitely several factors that affect urban tree health, and typically it's not just one thing that starts to kill the trees. However, there is definitely one culprit that seems to have a profound impact on tree health in Connecticut. So within the past 20 years, the northeastern US and Connecticut have suffered from increasingly severe droughts. Drought can be defined as a moisture deficit that causes social, environmental, and economic effects. Depending on the duration and timing of the drought, the impacts can vary. Especially droughts in spring or during the planting season can significantly increase crop and tree mortality. For trees, prolonged droughts during the growing season will reduce photosynthesis, reduce the storage of carbohydrates in the roots, and negatively affect long-term tree survival. The global climate change has already increased the average temperatures, and the earth is getting warmer and drier, with the weather becoming more extreme. The combination of hot weather and long droughts is a very bad combination for tree and forest health, and is likely to cause more tree deaths in the future. Especially in the western US, the dry and hot weather has already increased the duration and intensity of the fire season, resulting in high forest mortality and issues with forest regeneration. Also, Connecticut has suffered from severe droughts within the past 20 years. On this slide, you see a graph that shows the drought severity index and coverage data for Connecticut in 2000 and 2020. The data is collected by the US Drought Monitor, which is a website, a great resource for exploring the current drought situation in the US. The Drought Severity and Coverage Index takes into account several indices used to estimate drought, and several climatological inputs are all used to estimate the drought levels nationally and regionally. The Severity and Coverage Index considers how much of the surface area in each region is affected by droughts of different severity. So typically what you see here on this graph, whenever you see larger and higher peaks, that indicates more widespread, long-lasting, and severe droughts. During 2010-2020, Connecticut has suffered several dry years, and during this time, urban maple mortality has increased in New Haven based on observational data. The connection between drought and tree health in Connecticut and many Northeast US states becomes evident if one looks at the description for drought severity categories for this region. The categories include description of the potential impacts that droughts may have regionally. The impacts vary by state, depending on what has been reported or observed during the past droughts. The drought categories for Connecticut reflect the importance of forests and urban trees, as 3 out of 4 categories in Connecticut report some impact on trees. This is really no surprise since 60% of the urban area in Connecticut is covered by urban forests. This slide shows a map of the drought impacts recorded in Connecticut in September last year. And in September, 90% of the Connecticut was affected by varying degrees of drought. The areas highlighted light orange and dark orange were affected by drought levels severe enough to impact tree health, so drought categories D1 and D2. So Connecticut drought categories vary from D0, which is abnormally dry, to D3, which indicates extreme drought. Under moderate drought, which is the category D1, the listed impacts include trees becoming stressed, and then under severe drought, trees become brittle, susceptible to insect attacks. And in the most severe category, D3, extreme drought, negative impacts are reported even in situations where irrigation is possible, such as Christmas tree farms, due to the general lack of water and water conservation measures. The current situation in the US and also in Connecticut is very bad at the moment, and it is actually reaching record high levels. Today I was trying to access the drought monitor website to get the latest information on the drought situation in Connecticut, but it seems that the website is down, possibly because everyone else is also trying to get to the latest drought data. Currently, the entire Connecticut is under abnormally dry conditions, which is not great for the trees that are just starting their growing season. The drought impacts are a bit sneaky, as there is a 2-week delay in the observation, so we just need to wait and see if we get more rain and the drought situation improves within the 2 weeks. Talking about delays, because the drought data actually has a delay, there is a great challenge when it's studying trees and drought, because there's definitely a delay in how the trees grow. They grow really slowly. They live many years. They need to be able to survive many years. And any problems with tree health are typically observed with a delay. In this respect, it is really crucial to have access to long-term observations of tree health in a large enough sample. So an attractive system to study the impact of drought on urban trees in Connecticut and especially New Haven area are offered by urban maples, because urban maples are the most common urban tree in Connecticut. They form 42% of the urban forest canopy cover in Connecticut. On this slide, you see a graph with mortality rates for urban maples collected in 2010-2020 by Dr. Jeff Ward from the Connecticut Ag Experiment Station. The blue bars in the graph represent the mortality rates in 2010, while the red bars represent the mortality in 2020. During the last 10 years, urban maple mortality has increased from 30 to 45%. In my opinion, it is very concerning that in the younger age classes, even 75% of the small trees die. As young trees are vulnerable to water deficits, it is highly probable that the recent droughts during 2010-2020 are a likely culprit for the increased mortality. Another pattern related to the maple mortality data in New Haven relates to differences in tree replanting rates between different New Haven neighborhoods. The data on this slide was collected in 2020 by Justin Alamo, who was a Plant Health Fellows intern working with Dr. Ward. The data Justin collected indicates that tree planting rates were lower in neighborhoods with lower socioeconomic status. On this chart, the yellow and red portions of the bars indicate the portions of the tree planting pits that did not have a living tree, and these portions were the largest in the neighborhoods with the lowest socioeconomic status. The exact factors associated with this pattern are not known. It is possible that since tree planting in New Haven is request-based, people are just not widely aware that this opportunity exists, so they have not been requesting as many trees to be replanted. However, it would be important to look at differences in tree stress levels and like the factors behind tree survival across New Haven to quantify potential tree health impacts in different neighborhoods and potentially form links to public health effects. Especially, it would be important to determine if there is anything that could be done to improve tree survival in the areas where tree mortality has been high. As a final note related to the drought situation, if you are interested in learning more about the current situation in Connecticut, check out the US Drought Monitor website for maps and data. You can also access data for the whole US and any other region. And then Connecticut specific information you can find in the Connecticut Drought Work Group website with a very detailed report on the current drought conditions. Besides drought, another factor that affects tree health in urban conditions is mechanical damage. This is definitely a big issue for urban tree health. Many times you see trees that have been hit by vehicles and the tree trunk is missing a large chunk of bark. In heavy snow years, snow removal machinery increases the risk of causing root damage to the roots that are located next to sidewalks. Sometimes the roots just simply don't have enough space, so they actually start to kind of take over the sidewalk as well. These mechanical injuries open passage for decay fungi, which can then result into mechanical failure, as you see in the picture in the middle on this slide. And in the cross section of that same tree on the right side, you see the decay column that has been developing in the center of the tree limb. So trees that fall in heavily urbanized areas can really cause power outages and significant property damages, and in the worst case, even injure or kill people. So in case you think that there might be a problematic or hazardous tree in your neighborhood, you can report that to request have it evaluated for tree removal. Or if there's like a hanging limb that is hazardously hanging over a roof or a power line, it might be worth reporting it. There is an online platform called SeeClickFix, where you can report all sorts of public works related issues, such as potholes, leaf pickup, and tree removal requests. It is important that citizens participate and report potential issues, as this sends a strong signal about the need for better tree care in urban areas. Another option in Connecticut is to contact your local tree warden to discuss potential solutions for tree removal or tree care. As a final incentive for reporting sketchy trees is that your vigilance can save a lot of money and prevent serious property damages and even save lives. Another unique issue for tree health in urban conditions is created by the heat island effects in urban areas. So heat island effects basically means that a local area has higher temperatures than the surrounding areas normally have. Pavement in urban conditions reserves the heat, increases the soil temperatures, and reflects it back to the tree canopies, causing heat stress. This results in accelerated evapotranspiration from the leaves and canopy and water loss. The pavement also prevents water from reaching the roots, which amplifies the heat island effects even further. These higher temperatures increase the prevalence of insect pests in urban areas. For instance, gloomy scale has benefited from the mild winter temperatures in urban areas. So basically the eggs of the insects, they survive, and the overwintering insects, they survive winters better. And then that has put positive impact on their development of the populations the next growing season. Tree species also vary in their response to the heat. For instance, ginkgo trees have lower tolerance to heat stress than ash, and ash is also better able to store carbon in the roots under droughts. So there might be definitely variation in tree species, how they respond to these abiotic stress conditions. Usually there is a silver lining in all matters possible, and also in this case there is a silver lining. The urban trees can act as sentinels of climate change, and we can make predictions of the impacts that climate change will have on native forests once the general temperatures are at urban levels. So kind of we can see like where things are developing in urban conditions. We can use that to predict what will happen in the native stands once the climate change starts to accelerate even further. The final part of my talk will focus on what can we potentially do to support tree health, to grow healthy and safe urban trees. So basically, to improve the drought tolerance of trees is one of the most important things that we need to do. So for the large existing trees, this would be very important to accomplish because these provide the most benefits in terms of cooling and shading. and landscape values. But bigger trees are definitely more challenging to care. An important thing that needs to be considered is that these trees should be protected from damage. So care should be taken whenever maintenance operations are done, close the trees so that the roots or the trunk of the trees are not damaged, so that no decay fungi or insects are attracted to the trees. Another one option, like in this picture here, you can see the tree roots are growing under the pavement, so it might be beneficial for this tree to have the pavement removed so that the tree would have better access to water and oxygen to support healthy root development. Another option that can be done is to add mulch at the base of the tree to increase the water content of the soil and to protect the roots from drying. And another important tool that everybody has at their disposal, even every citizen, is to just monitor the trees, look at the trees, and if you see anything suspicious going on, make sure that you report it to the people who are responsible for taking care of the trees. So tree wardens would be a good target for this, or the Connecticut Ag Experiment Station, because we also have people who know something about trees, including myself. To improve the drought tolerance of trees in younger trees, young existing trees, this provides more options because the smaller trees are more manageable, but they're also more vulnerable to drought impacts. So here, affecting the drought tolerance or caring the trees so that they won't suffer from droughts is even more important than for bigger trees. Also in this case, the tree should be protected from damage. Mulch can also protect the roots from losing water too fast. And especially for young trees, it is important to provide enough water, especially during the summer months. This might sound a little bit radical, but I would definitely suggest that people would focus on watering their trees instead of their lawns, because lawns are kind of becoming a luxury item with the accelerating climate change. What trees, basically young trees, need is 25 gallons of water per every week from spring to summer. So this is something that could be done. And the water needs to be released slowly, so you cannot just dump a bunch of water because the water might just run off. You need to kind of slowly let the water saturate the soil at the tree base. Another thing is leave enough space so that the tree will have a good growing site. Also, monitoring the condition of these young trees is important. The benefits of watering is very clear when you look at what is happening in the roots after rain events. So even a small increase in soil water content helps to restore root metabolism and water uptake. And this restoration of the metabolism after heavy droughts enables allocation of carbon to storage, which means in the roots. And this allocation of carbon to storage increases the chances of survival. And especially if the droughts happen during leaf emergence, such as spring, this is a very critical time to provide enough water for especially young developing trees. Another thing that we should definitely focus more on is to select tree species that are highly drought tolerant, or tree like cultivars that are highly drought tolerant. For instance, within the genus like maples, there is high variation in between the species, how drought tolerant they are. So definitely these least drought tolerant species of maples should be avoided. And there is even large variation within sugar and red maples. So it would be definitely beneficial to test the drought tolerance before selecting the cultivars for planting. And planting palettes in Connecticut definitely have some room for improvement. So we should plant more diverse species, like higher diversity of different species, and favor native species when new trees are established. Another like an interesting direction for research relates to nutrients and tree stress, and more specifically nanonutrients and tree stress. Because earlier research indicates that urban maples in heavily urbanized soils actually have better stress adaptation capabilities. High concentrations of copper, zinc, iron, and some heavy metals are associated with higher stress tolerance levels in urban maples. This is pretty interesting in my opinion. The mechanism is not exactly clear, and we don't exactly know what kind of role these individual metal ions play for tree stress tolerance. Last summer, we conducted a pilot study on apple trees in the CAES farms in Lockwood. We applied iron and magnesium nanoparticle oxides on apple leaves to study their impact on stress levels in the leaves. And it seems that the application of iron and magnesium can have potential benefits for tree stress responses. As you can see in this picture, the control samples are indicated with the white bar, and then on the y-axis there is the measure of stress levels, relative injury, and the higher the values are, the higher the stress levels were. And this orange bar represents the samples treated with the iron nanoparticles, and these leaves seem to have lower stress levels compared to controls. So there might be some potential in using nanomaterials as a tree care agent, because they are only needed in very low amounts, and they're probably they're more accessible to the trees because of their small size. So these offer some interesting opportunities for studying their impact on tree health. So this summer, what I'm planning to do related to the maple stress levels, I'm planning to look at what is actually killing the maples in New Haven, or how the maples are actually doing here. So what I intend to do is monitor environmental variables and how they are associated with tree stress levels, such as chlorophyll levels and expression of the genes related to pigment formation. So basically early fall color expression, because this is considered to be an indicator of maple decline, which is a syndrome that is mostly associated with abiotic stress. We are also planning to look at the microbiome in maple leaves in collaboration with Dr. Blair Stevens to see if the microbiome of the maples is associated with stress levels, and if it varies between different neighborhoods. And we're also interested in looking at the soil nutrient levels if we find this previously found association between certain metal elements and maple stress levels. It would be interesting to see if this pattern also repeats in New Haven. And then this could possibly be used for targeted applications of certain metal elements to improve tree stress levels. Another project that we are currently working on is studying the impact of copper oxide nanoparticles on drought stress in chestnuts. This experiment happens in greenhouse conditions, so this would probably have mostly relevance for younger trees and for nursery conditions. And we are using chestnuts as a hardwood tree model. So we are basically conducting an experiment where we apply nanoparticles, copper nanoparticles on the leaves, and we see if they have an impact on drought tolerance, the microbiome, gene expression, most specifically these channel proteins that regulate the transport of water and mineral nutrients in the plants. And then possibly we are interested in looking at if the copper has an impact on blight resistance in the trees. And these might also find some potential applications on tree care, perhaps in nursery conditions and with young trees in the field. And as I mentioned, we are using chestnuts as a seedling model. So far we have started a preliminary experiment with 5 chestnut genotypes, divided them into 4 treatments: control, drought, nano, and drought nano. So we're also interested in, so we are studying the interaction between nanoparticle application and drought stress in these trees. We have applied the nanoparticles on the chestnut leaves in beginning of April. So far, the data indicates that the leaf area is largest in the plants that have been treated with the nanoparticles only, so no drought, only the nanoparticles. Whereas the drought plus nano combination has resulted in the fastest growth in height. These results are very preliminary. There is a lot of variation in this data, but at least we can say that the nanoparticles are not harmful for the plants. So this definitely indicates that these nanoparticles may have potentially positive impacts on drought tolerance in chestnuts. Key people involved, I want to first acknowledge all my collaborators. So 2 amazing people, my research assistants for this season, Aiden Florio and Jackie Lemon, who have recently started in my lab. They have basically replaced me. I was wandering aimlessly one day and was telling Jeff that I have been replaced. So I don't have anything to do now. They are doing all the work and they're doing amazing. Jackie Leroux, technician in Blair Stevens' lab, has been helping a lot with the watering. Nadine Lucien, an intern from Albertus Magnus College, she just presented results yesterday for her project that she was working with me for the past month. Dr. Nubia Tufesa Mena, she's the expert in nanos. I don't understand many of the things that are related to the nanoparticles, and it's a really great collaboration. Dr. Washington De Silva and Dr. Blair Steven have both helped a lot with the research. So in summary, it's very likely that Connecticut is going to see more severe droughts. And because of this, it's very likely that urban trees are going to be stressed, but we can help by planting more drought-tolerant trees, watering them and monitoring them, and reporting any problems that we might see. We should also favor drought-resistant trees for the newly planted trees that are established. We should aim at increasing species and genetic diversity and explore new tree care methods in order to improve stress tolerance of trees. And in case you have any questions, ideas, or are interested in collaboration, drop me a line, send me an email, and you can also follow me on Twitter. I tweet about urban trees and other various topics. So thank you very much for your attention.
All right. Thank you so much, Dr. Susanna, for a very interesting and wonderful presentation. So right now we have about 5 or 6 questions. Let me read that to you. The first question is several trees have been cut in the Huntington Street, Prospect Street, and East Rock Street nearby. They look like big old age and health. Would you give some explanation why they need to be cut? What the benefit?
So how did the trees look like? Was the question specifying that they looked like they were healthy?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, look like they just look like big or age but still healthy. So I'm not sure how you're gonna answer the question, but it's just you have any idea why the tree need to be cut on our street in station? I mean on next to the station.
It's possible that it is related to the power lines overlapping with the tree canopies. because that poses a risk for power outages in case of storms. And sometimes it is really difficult to evaluate if part of the tree canopy has a mechanical failure that is developing. So you cannot really see immediately if the tree is going to come down during a storm, but these storm events are also going to be more frequent in the future. So I think this is just trying to prevent problems from arising or accumulating or escalating into like a crisis situation.
Susanna, I would also add that a lot of those were ash trees that were taken down, which were dying from emerald ash borer.
Okay.
Oh, I see. Thank you, Jeff, for another explanation. So we have Jeff with us too. So the second question, a sugar bush operator in Vermont told me that this spring sap flow had unusually low sugar content. Would extraction of sap during the spring be a good measure of quality of carbohydrates storage for quantifying stress in urban tree?
It might be. I haven't really read that much about that, but it might be a good way of evaluating the condition of the trees. That's a good idea.
Any how about Jeff? What do you think?
I have no idea. I'm going to let her take it. I was just answering the one question.
Yeah,
Okay.
appreciate that.
Okay. All right. That's okay. That's fine. So I go to the next question. Biochar retain water like ordinary mulch, yet is more stable long term. Is the use of biochar for this purpose being explored? If so, what are the disadvantages of biochar?
Yeah, biochar definitely offers interesting opportunities. It might have beneficial impacts on the soil microbiome. I don't know how biochar differs from compost, but definitely adding organic material to the soil has a benefit for improving the aeration of the soil and also creates like a healthy space for the roots to grow. So there are definitely benefits for that.
Okay, all right, I move on to the next question. This spring, some of the eastern red maple and oak trees seem to have a late bud break and leafing out. Can drought be a factor or perhaps some of other factors? This is an observation in Norwalk, Connecticut.
I mean, typically the drought impacts from the previous season are seen this season. So if there are any like less leaf mass developing or exceptional coloring in the leaves that are visible this growing season, they might be impact from the last year when the drought was really heavily impacting Connecticut. So yeah, it is very likely that drought has a role in this phenomenon.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Susanna. Next question. What about automatic watering systems? Does anyone or community have watering systems?
That's a good question. Typically, it comes down to as a question of money. So if the money is available to establish these automatic irrigation systems, that would be excellent to have. But one option that I was just reading about in Massachusetts, I don't remember which town it is, but they have established these tree watering bags. So basically they have a tree watering bag at the base of the tree. They request people to refill the bag every week. And then there is probably a hole that slowly, or a vent at the bottom of the bag that slowly releases the water to the soil around the base of the tree. So these might be one like a cheap option to use for irrigating urban trees during heavy droughts.
Okay, thank you. So the next question, can you refer us to article or list on drought-resistant variety of natives?
Of native trees.
native trees?
I can definitely find a reference for that. I don't know where would I share that information.
I think you can type in the this Q&A session. Can you? Or you
I
can.
don't have a reference on the top from the top of my head, but I can definitely look into finding one. I can tweet it if you follow me on Twitter. So you can find me on Twitter at Keriö Susanna. I will tweet about. I will find a reference, and I will post it on Twitter regarding the drought tolerance of native tree species.
Perfect. Okay, where to go? Yes. Anyway, just a quick friend. So at the end of her talk, so Vicky and I will upload the whole presentation into our Facebook and our YouTube channel, so you guys can go watch her again. I know I think some of us had some issue at the beginning about the connection, but you can also rewatch again to our YouTube, our station YouTube channel and the Facebook site. And also, I believe she also linked her Twitter account, so she can post the answer of your question, retweet into her Twitter account. And the next question is, oh, look like I did answer this one. I think you did answer this one. All right. The next one, could response to nanoparticle application be a measure of nutrient deficiency? As trees are now provided excessive carbon through carbon dioxide and in atmosphere and overall nitrification of environment. Are there reasons to expect a difference between nanoparticle versus the same amount of the soluble salt of this element? Can you see the question? I mean, the kind of long question.
Yeah, I can answer part of that question. I will start from the end. So comparison between conventional compounds and nano compounds, it might become a question of accessibility. So nano compounds are typically smaller, less than 100 nanometers in diameter. They may be more, because of their size, they might be more easily accessible to the plant tissues, and they might be more easily assimilated, for instance, from leaves to the plant. Question about if the response to the nanoparticles is actually a matter of a nutrient deficiency. Well, that's an excellent question. Definitely this should be taken into consideration when these experiments are done. So probably you should, the right thing to do is to take a baseline sample and analyze the concentrations of the compounds that are going to be tested, to have like an estimate of the nutrient status of the trees before you actually start the experiment. So yeah, that is a really good point. That definitely should be controlled before starting the application. And I heard many scientists say that the control samples, they are boring as hell, but they are very important in getting solid data from your experiments. So don't forget to include control samples in your studies.
Okay, thank you so much for the answer. Okay, the next question is, would it make sense to change the spacing and placement of tree on the street? More towns still use the soil on a march approach, evenly spaced. Would it be benefit the microbiome to plant in cluster? It would certainly help with watering and maintenance.
That's a good question. It's just sometimes it comes down to the limitations posed by the urban environments. So for instance, in park settings where you have more space to plant like clusters of trees, this kind of clustering approach might be actually a good idea. But then on the other hand, if you have street trees, like in these very small tree pits, it might become an issue of the roots competing for the same very limited space that is already available in the urban soil. So like this kind of like dense spacing may not work in every setting. So you have to kind of always evaluate case by case. what is the best solution for planting the trees.
Okay, and the last question, I think it's more like a statement from Rich Cole. He said, Devi tree has a good list of drought-resistant native trees. So, any comment on that?
Well, I mean, for instance, that's what I have been told. For instance, the chestnut trees that I am studying, they should be relatively drought tolerant. But the thing is that there hasn't been much studies done on comparing the different genotypes in terms of their drought tolerance. So there is still some, like a lot of things that we don't know exactly about how drought tolerant different different genotypes of the same species are. And I don't have like a list of trees that are especially drought tolerant on the top of my head, but I'm sure this information is available. But there is still many things that should be looked at to determine what is the optimal choice for the most drought tolerant cultivars that should be planted in urban environments where tree planting has been challenging.
Okay, all right, all set. Look like no further question. Thank you so much, Dr. Susanna, for the wonderful presentation. And again, once again, her talk and presentation will be uploaded into our station, YouTube and Facebook. I'm gonna give you the virtual applause to her. Thank you so much, and
Thank
you
you
all
so
have
much.
a good day, and you too, Susanna, have a good day, and see you soon. Okay, bye bye, everyone.